And we are back for day two. I'm joined by Steve Letizia and Tom Kavanaugh here this time around. And we're talking through the board, what's going on in the draft, and who's on the board right now, Steve? I had to turn my TV off for
The
it. So,
Jets are on the clock. They just picked Malachi Corley.
Oh,
okay,
wow. That's rich.
that is rich.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I know some people loved Corley. I couldn't get over after watching his tape and thinking, this is a lot of screens. And looking up the numbers and seeing that 40% of his yards came off screens was just kind of like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Like it literally was all screens. Like that, all of his good
It was
plays.
very, very Rayless Jones, like PTSD. When you're like, okay, like it's cool, like you're a gadget player, like you can do some pretty cool stuff after the catch, but like how often are we going to use that in the NFL?
Yeah, like Velus Jones. If Velus Jones didn't run a 4.3, like
Right,
that's a 4.5 guy, like that's even worse.
Yeah, it's very
so.
true.
If we take a look at what we've got on our board right now, this is sorted. If we want to sort it by our NFL rankings, this is what we're looking at. But I'm going to sort it by our Bears rankings because we have positional value to consider here. The NFL rankings take positional value out of the equation, while the Chicago ranking is obviously the board that we built. So, what do you guys, and we'll start with Steve and then go to Tom, just in the order of the screen there. What do you guys see here that you are interested in hoping keeps falling?
Yeah, I think just right at the top there, Christian Haynes, the guard from UConn, like that would be an absolute steal at 75. He can step in and he can compete with Nate Davis right away for like the right guard spot. He also can play center. Like he's just so good, and he's athletic, he's powerful, he's mean. Like man, that would be such a steal. I thought he'd be a guy who like would be a borderline like top 50 pick. So if he's there at 75, to me that's a no-brainer. That's a run to the podium situation.
Yeah, I second everything Steve just said. I think he would be definitely my top option here. I think that even you said it, the immediate need of interior offensive line, Steve. I look down the road, like in the future. Tevin Jenkins, last year of his contract. Nate Davis hasn't really lived up to his contract. You only signed Coleman Shelton to a 1-year deal. Like you have so much uncertainty moving forward. Why reach on like one of these defensive linemen when like I'm not as familiar with this range of the draft for defensive linemen, but like the hit rate on those guys is just like not great. This is where you find your interior offensive line starters, and I think Christian Haynes is just that.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit to the defensive line here at this point. Like, I mean, Brandon Dorless, we thought he'd be gone by now, so that might be something, but he's also a tweener, which is always a little scary, right? He's a guy who won on the edge a lot in college and is going to need to win on the interior more in the NFL. And then after that, I mean, our next available guy is Dwayne Carter, who I like a lot, but I don't think this is his range. Like he's high on our board, but I think this would be a reach to take him here. Same with Leonard Taylor the third or even a Mekhi Wingo. Like I think that's a tier of defensive tackles in itself, but that's somewhere like 100 to 125. I think that's not 75 to me. So, right. I mean, I'm with you guys. I think Christian Haynes makes all the sense in the world here. Tom, why do you think Troy Franklin's fallen so far?
I can't speak to that exactly, like, but I will say I think you can run into some of the same issues I think I tried to outline, and it's very hard to like contextualize and like put it to words. But he's an outside receiver who's like not very fluid to move into the slot at 176-ish pounds. Like for as productive as he was, I just think that's a very hard translation to the NFL. Like when you don't provide that slot versatility, which I really don't know if he does. Like I think he's just mainly a down the field guy. And if that's the case, like usually those guys stick on the outside. But like, do you want a 176 pounder playing on the outside? It's a very weird projection. Like for him to be like a decent, like he's a good athlete, don't get me wrong, but like you saw Xavier Worthy, right? He's an elite athlete who's very undersized. When Troy Franklin's is kind of a good one. I think all of those concerns kind of make his projection kind of murky, which is why maybe kind of NFL teams are having a tough time to figure him out.
And then what do you think about Roman Wilson there too? Because he was a guy he was starting to get some like early second round buzz there right towards the end of this.
I always thought that was kind of crazy. I mean, I like elements of his game. I think for the right offenses, he can be a useful player. He blocks. I think he's like a smart, aware player. Like he always is where he's supposed to be. He's always looking for the ball when he's supposed to be. I just didn't really see a dynamic player at all. Like he kind of just screamed just a guy to me. So the third round, where you can kind of find those like reliable slot guys, I think that's where he's going to end up. Well, that is where he's going to end up because it is the third round.
Brandon Coleman just got drafted by the Commanders.
Oh, damn.
Off the board. He would have been perfect for the Bears. Guy who could play tackle and guard.
I was going to say, that sucks, but that's a win for our board.
Yeah.
I want to ask
you. We were high on him early.
Yeah.
You guys have done more work on the interior offensive line. Like, okay, obviously Christian Haynes, I think we all collectively want him, but who are some other guys you're looking at on the interior offensive line? Because that's where I want them to go.
So I'm actually going to ask Steve a question within that. What do you think? Do you think Cooper Beebe is a popular name for the Bears right here?
Yeah.
Beebe, I think it is actually. But however you say it,
right.
Do you think there's a big tier difference between him and Christian Haynes and then him and a Zach Zinter or a Hunter Norzad? Do you see them on the same level, on separate levels? Where are you at?
I had Haynes above Beebe. I can't remember my actual rankings, but I think they were like 3 and 4 in terms of guard, and that was including like Fuaga and Jordan Morgan, who I had at guard. So they were kind of in the same tier for me, and then Zinter and like Pooney and some of these other guys were like a tier below them. So I think Beebe and Haynes, to me, either of those picks would be good. I don't know if they're gonna love Beebe, but I think he could fit like with what they do. But I know that just everything about Christian Haynes, I feel like the Bears are going to love him.
Dude, I have got to say, when it comes to Cooper Beebe, like every time I watch him, I'm just like, this dude runs like a refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I see his athletic testing and I'm just like, how? Like, I don't understand it.
I didn't see that athleticism on his tape. Like he's not a bad athlete, especially for that size. But like, dude, his testing was insane.
Yeah,
I actually thought he was a decent athlete. But like, I thought when he did well getting out into space and like locking onto guys. Like when he might not be the greatest athlete, but he rarely like missed his mark when he gets to the second level, or like he's really good at finding guys at the second level and then get out in space. So that's why I think like even if he's not a fantastic athlete, just like the way he plays in this with the smarts and everything, he kind of makes up for that.
Yeah, I think at some point I hit a kind of idea with him where it was like he's really fast at shuffling laterally, right? Mm-hmm. And that can help probably his agility scores here, even if he is pretty stiff through the hips, where like I wouldn't think he'd be that agile because he's definitely, I thought he was pretty stiff, but he is nimble laterally. Like he does like a sidestep really quickly, really well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought in pass protection, you kind of saw some of the stiffness at times. Like when guys got on his hip, he kind of just like concedes his edge. But like in terms of like in run blocking, like in outside zone and like you said, kind of moving laterally, like when he can kind of shuffle a little bit, I definitely saw more athletic. He was kind of like bouncy on his feet. If that makes sense, like more explosive.
Yeah,
like,
springy kind of.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
In the scouting report, I was really proud of this when I say he's built like a refrigerator tied to a jetpack. Like
that. Pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate. I wanted to get you guys' take because I'm just like looking at prior offensive linemen that Seattle drafted, guards specifically, with Shane Waldron, and there are like all of these like hulking guards, like Damian Lewis. I think his name was like Austin Bradford, I believe.
Yeah.
Last year, like
Anthony Bradford. I didn't really like him last year, and I was surprised at how early they took him. But I was watching some of his tape just the other day, and it was like he was just a big mauler, right? And it's like if I remember right, he did test pretty well athletically, but his tape didn't show it. Which, I mean, it almost feels like to me, Beebe is a fit for Waldron.
That's what I'm like trying to get at, because like Tevin Jenkins, I don't know if he's like fits that mold physically, like from a size profile, but the way he plays, like absolutely, like he's a rugged, mean type of dude who flourishes in the run game. Whereas like Nate Davis, I think is kind of like more of a zone finesse guy. Like he's a good run blocker, don't get me wrong, but like I think you kind of want to utilize his athleticism more than like his power. You know what I mean? Where that's where I'm like kind of confused on like what kind of mold that they're going for, because Poles has always said he likes lighter and athletic guys, whereas Waldron, from his time in Seattle at least, was working with like bigger guards, bodyguard types.
Yeah, and then we got Ron in the comments asking we have to choose who's going at 75. So I think we're all in agreement on Christian Haynes there, right? That's as long as he's there, that's probably the pick.
I mean, that's who I would want. I don't know. Like, Tom, you brought up a good point. Like, yeah, the Seattle usually does go for like those bigger guards. So maybe, I mean, if that's the case, then they're not going to be interested in Haynes at all, because that's the exact opposite of what Haynes is. He's actually undersized. So, I mean, that still would be my pick, but like, I could also see them going. We haven't really talked about like edge players yet, and like I think that might be where they want to go. Tom, I know we have the same thought. Like you don't really see a lot of edge players outside of the first round turning into anything, but if they did go that route, like Austin Booker, I think is the one guy who has a chance to turn into something down the road. So like that might, and it's a bigger immediate need for the Bears probably. So that might be a direction they want to go as well.
And we had football CFC Andy in the comments asking where our centers were on the board and advocating for Cedric Van Pran here. So, Steve, what do you think of Cedric Van Pran?
I didn't love Cedric Van Pran as much as everyone else did. You know, he was like getting like, you know, he was in the beginning of the draft cycle, he was kind of in the same discussion as like Jackson Powers Johnson, Graham Barnes, Zach Frazier. And that never really made sense. I think he's more now projected in like where he should go, which is like between picks 75, 100, 100, a little after 100, like, which I like him a lot more there, like than the second round talk that was, you know, happening early in the season. So if he was the pick at 75, I wouldn't be thrilled. I would maybe understand it. You know, he only played center in college, but I think he has some guard versatility as well, just given his size and everything. So I wouldn't hate it. And I just have like Norzad and Limmer and Bortolini over him. So those are the I would be targeting if they go with like more of a pure center.
Yeah, and I mean I'm generally in agreement with you. With Van Pran, I'd be very like, that's fine.
Yeah,
you know, I wouldn't be upset about it, but I'd be like, I've got Bortolini, I've got Norzad, I've got Limmer all ahead of him.
Talk to me about Norzad, because Q, I know you're a big fan of him, and I just like I don't know enough about him.
Yeah, so I mean, Steve was actually on him. Steve started watching when we were at the Senior Bowl, and he was talking about him. I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'm sure he's great. And then like I got back home and watched him, was just like, oh man, this guy can play. He's thick, he's wide, he's got an anchor, wide frame, and he can move. Like he has a lot of tools at his disposal that make you wonder why he's still in college. Like, that's the way I see it, because he's 24.
I was gonna say, how old is he? Okay, damn.
Yeah, I mean, he graduated from Cornell with an engineering degree.
Oh, okay.
And then played 2 years at Penn State, and played guard 2 years ago, and then center this past year. So like he's got that versatility. Like that would be another one. Like I would actually be really, maybe 75 is like a little high, but I don't think
I wouldn't care
by that much.
Okay, wow, you guys really like him. Okay.
Like, I mean, I love Limmer too, and Limmer has just nosedived in the last 2 weeks for some reason. I like some injury flag had to come out about him or something. Like teams found an injury flag and then it got around the league because he has just nosedive down boards. And I loved his tape. I loved how much fight he constantly has and what he showed at the Senior Bowl. But at this point, I wouldn't take him at 75 just because I'm scared off by how much he's nosedived.
Yeah. I'm looking, he didn't test. I mean, he did the vertical jump, but other than that, he didn't really test. And he's got some pretty short arms too. But
Limmer? Yeah, Limmer, short arms, but he
his vertical jump was insane. I don't know if he did anything else at his pro day, but yeah, his vertical was not 98th percentile.
Yeah, vertical was great. Broad was good. Bench, I mean, most reps at the combine, if you care about bench. 10-yard split was one of the best in the class for centers. I mean, his athleticism came in really strong, 9.8 RAS.
Okay, I don't know why it's not on mock draft. I should just
mock draftable can be weird about it. Relative athletic score is a lot more reliable, than mock draftable, but mock draftable is so much cleaner of a presentation. It's like a constant dilemma.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, yeah, if there's an injury thing, I can't see the Bears being in on him. But I could see, like, I'm looking at his like just like size profile, and like if he's super athletic, kind of undersized center, I could see them loving him. I could see Poles loving him. Again, I don't even know what they're looking for.
My comp for him was Ethan Pochik, which I thought was a really good fit for the Bears. Like what last year, I think it was when he was a free agent. So it looks like we got Caden Wallace, offensive tackle out of Penn State, going to the Patriots, and Junior Colson coming off the board to the Chargers. First Michigan player to the Chargers, right?
There we go.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. We're 5 picks away, and like there are more than 5 players I'd be very happy with if the Bears.
Who are your top 5 here?
Haynes. I mean, I love Baker, but they're not picking a wide receiver. So like Haynes, I think Norzad, Bordellini, those centers would be good options. BB would be in there as well. And then if they go, and then like probably Austin Booker, if they go with an edge. And I'm sure there are other guys. I'm just kind of looking at the screen right now. I'm sure there are other guys that I would be fine with too. But hopefully we get like a mini wide receiver run here. I think that'd be perfect for the Bears if Baker and Franklin get off the board right here.
Can we look at the edges available real quick?
Yeah. If you guys want anything, just holler.
Yeah, because I mean Booker, I would love. Everyone else like Isaac, maybe Solomon would be probably a reach. Trice, I don't love.
Dude, if they took Price, I was gonna hang up on the call. I'm not gonna say anything
all the day,
honestly.
So if Chris Braswell was here, how would you feel about that one? I got asked that earlier today, and I was like very in between. Even though I knew I had him ranked way higher than 75, I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that.
I would have liked it if they went with Braswell here. He's off the board though, right?
Yeah. He went like maybe 5-10 picks ago.
What team did he go to?
Let's see. I can tell you.
Giants are about to announce their pick. Let's see. Corner.
Braswell went to Tampa.
Oh, yeah, that's nice for them.
Who got it? Who got Phillips?
Andrew Phillips went to the Giants at 70. So 4 picks away.
Dude, I cannot believe Johnny Newton. I mean, I know the injury, whatever.
The teams must be really worried.
Yeah, because like he's too good. Like there's just no way. Like he's too good. I couldn't believe he fell that late, and I couldn't believe Washington was the team. Like they have already 2 really good IDLs. Like it was just kind of strange. But I tweeted out, man, the Bears. They already traded for Montez Sweat. I'd be giving calls about Jonathan Allen. Like if you can get him for the cheap. Because the writing's kind of on the wall.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're the only person. I had someone else suggest that to me too. Of just pair Jonathan Allen back with Montez Sweat and run it back.
I'd be totally fine with that.
Would fill a need,
right?
So we got 4 picks.
If we're just basing it off the past 2 years, the 3rd round has not been a sweet spot for Mr. Ryan Poles. I mean, I wasn't the biggest Zach Pickens guy. I thought that he was drafted like around too early, and then Bayless Jones, obviously he's been kind of the pick that people will the poll detractors will point at, but hopefully he can buck the trend in this one.
I mean, I think the talent's on the board for him too. I mean,
for sure.
I don't remember who was on the board when Pickens went last year, but I had Pickens right around, I want to say 65 or something on my board. So it was I was fine with it. I think I fell in love with the athletic traits a little more than I should have with Pickens. But I'm still hopeful. Isaiah Adams went this early. Okay.
To the Cardinals at 71.
Dude, I don't really know what the Cardinals are doing, honestly. Like, I have not loved, other than Marvin Harrison, I'm a Mizzou alum, right? Like, I should be staying in guys like Darius Robinson, but again, I get the injury thing with Johnny Newton, but I just have a hard time swallowing that pill. You're taking Darius Robinson over Johnny Newton.
I think with Adams, I don't know if this is that big of reach because his tape at guard in 2022 was a lot better. They moved him to tackle, and
I don't know why
we have him at 107. I think I liked him a little better than that. Yeah, his tape got knocked extra because he was playing tackle when he's a guard.
Right. Yeah. I think he should probably be. He probably would have been should have been a top 100 player for us, but just right around 100. So it's a little bit of a reach, but not crazy.
I'll be honest. I thought this was the wide receiver from Illinois, not the.
Oh,
Yeah. So I was like, dude,
Isaiah
what are they doing?
Johnson, is it?
That would have been something.
Yeah.
Over Javon Baker and Troy Franklin. And
I was about to say,
Roman Wilson.
what are they doing?
Honestly, Roman Wilson still being available is strange. Not that the Bears are going to pick him, but I'm just surprised. Like, he had pretty good tape. He went to the Senior Bowl, played really well. Like, by all accounts, is like a hard worker, a good blocker. Like, he just seemed like a guy that was going to be drafted higher.
What'd you guys think of Jalen Polk going so high?
Dude, people really love Jalen Polk. I liked him. Like I wanted to like him more, but like this year I kind of like factored in, like when we were kind of looking through like production scores, I was trying to kind of factor that into my grading, and like he was kind of like a 1-year wonder. Tested okay, didn't test great, which like doesn't really matter to me a ton for wide receivers, but like I just thought the tape was like solid all the way around, kind of like he was just like a jack of all trades, master of none type. Like nothing blew me away about his tape.
No, I felt the same way watching his tape because like I wrote the scouting report on him, man. It just kind of felt like a lot of it's good, but nothing stands out aside from the hands. Like the hands really did stand out a few times, but and the concentration, the catch concentration was really strong. Of like, a DB might tip a ball and he's still coming down with it, type thing. But aside from that, I don't really think that's a trait you want to bet on either. But like I was just kind of like, he does well, but I don't really have a strong conviction of why he's doing well, which makes me wonder how much of it is the 3 NFL wide receivers on the same offense.
Yeah, I thought the same way. Like if you 50 or 60, like in that range that they would pick them, like, oh, that's a good pick. But 36 or whatever, I don't know, whatever they picked him at, like that was.
Well, did you see what the Patriots said?
No, I didn't see.
Was it something like the Bears drafted a Washington wide receiver and everybody loved it, so we did the same thing?
That would be funny. But it was literally like they said, we know he's not the best at any of these things, but he's the type of player we want in our locker room for a rebuild.
Okay.
It's just kind of like, that is a weird thing to say about your pick.
That's what the Raiders said about Clellan Ferrell when they took him.
That's what you say about like a 3rd, 4th round guy, not
right.
top 35.
Yeah. I want to see if I can find the exact quote to make sure I'm not misquoting it, but it was like a wild thing to say.
Yeah.
I honestly liked McMillan better than Polk. I didn't like have them drastically. Like I had 3rd round grades on both of them, but like I thought McMillan just had more juice and he was just kind of more smooth and fluid as a route runner, to where like
I felt more confident in what I thought his role would be.
For sure. I just gravitate towards that style more. Like I think Polk is more of like a physical guy who kind of like can win with. The thing with Polk is like he could win early in routes, like with his releases and stuff like that. I just feel like once he gained that initial separation, DB's made up the ground so quickly. Like he just doesn't stride away from anybody. And I think that's only going to be more of an issue at the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. All right, this quote is buried in Twitter somewhere, so I can't spend half the show searching for it.
The Cowboys picked Cooper Beebe, but I missed who the Panthers picked. I just saw that on Twitter. But
it's not up online yet. It's just says the pick is in for the
Panthers. Got Trevin Wallace, the linebacker from Kentucky. So unless Atlanta picks Haynes, he'll be on the board for the Bears.
Trevin Wallace was a guy that I didn't even get a grade on.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly,
I didn't watch.
It was hard to care that much about linebackers when you're scouting for the Bears because it's like we have a ton of them.
Right. It's my least favorite position to watch, honestly. Like even I like watching running, and I don't like watching running backs, but like I cannot stand watching linebackers, especially at the college level, where it's like, all right, like how much am I supposed to take away from what you guys are doing here? Like,
so I honestly I enjoyed watching linebackers depending on who the linebacker was. Like, I really enjoyed watching Junior Colson
try to defend. For like NFL like system type colleges like Michigan for sure. But like I just hate watching them defend college offense. It's like, okay, well, it's like an RPO every other play. Like, what am I supposed to take away here?
Well, and like NFL or college defenses, like I did not enjoy watching Edgerrin Cooper aside from the highlight plays. It was like, well, he's not actually dropping into coverage, and you're not trying to figure out what he's reading because he's just going. Like, so it was that wasn't as enjoyable to me. But a guy like what was his name? Peyton Wilson and Junior Colson, I did enjoy their coverage reps quite a bit because it was like, how did he know that guy was going to be there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like we see. I didn't watch a ton of Bedroom Cooper, but like whenever I watched, like when I watched like Jermaine Burton, he kind of stood out to me sometimes when they were playing Texas A&M. And I feel like guys like that go like literally every year in the second and third round, and like you just don't really hear much. Like they're just like the highly athletic guys who, like you said, Q, just play with their heads on fire, just kind of go, don't really think the game at a high level, and it's like there's guys like that in every draft.
Yeah. Falcons picked Braylon Trice right in front of the Bears.
All right.
So so now we know who's on the. I mean, Christian Haynes is on the board for the Bears. Austin Booker's on the board for the Bears. Like either of those two guys, like Norzad, like they have a lot of different directions they can go here. I think we're in a good spot. They can also trade down too. Like I wouldn't be surprised about that either.
Sorry, I know the Bears are about to pick, but if we're speaking about teams that are smoking a little something's in the air. What are the Falcons doing, man? Trading up for Michael Penix, that's kind of been talked to death at this point. But trade up for Ruka Aurora. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I don't know if you guys were fans of his. I watched him last year, didn't really see it.
My thing with that was like I had Aurora as a top 50 player. So like I get him going in that kind of range, but trading up for him when Chris Jenkins is still on the board, when Johnny Newton is still on the board, I am really confused by that.
Yeah.
And the Michael Penix thing, it's Ryan Pace. He doesn't tell the owner they're taking a quarterback, doesn't tell the quarterback they're taking a quarterback, lets him find out at the draft party a minute before it happens. It's Ryan Pace all over again.
Yeah, unbelievable. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I like the player Farouk we're talking about, but yeah, I agree with Q. Like you said, it's the fact that they traded up to get him and drafted him ahead of two guys who are clearly better, clearly.
So we're all thinking Christian Haynes here, but Austin Booker is one of our other options. What else do you guys think is like within the realm of possibility? I can scroll. I can go to any position. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I feel like it's going to be an edge or an
offensive. I can see Dorless for sure because they love the big edge tweener types. Like I could definitely see him.
Okay, so those are the three we got right now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna highlight them.
I mean, they can't get enough of those tweener types. It seems like every year, like
that's the thing that I actually had a hard time with thinking about, like the Bears need to draft a 3 technique. I was kind of like, they already have multiple passing down 3 techniques.
Yeah, like guys you want to kick inside, but they're just like cool at playing them at the edge.
They had Cam Harden for a visit. I know that.
They had a lot of cornerbacks in it, which is odd.
Can you look at IDL?
Yeah.
I just want to see like who else is left. I was praying Michael Hall.
Me too.
Yeah. I know like when regards to cornerback, like you don't want to draft for need in the 3rd round and anything, but like cornerback would just seem odd.
Yeah.
Like maybe if it's a day 3 corner, that's fine.
Christian Haynes is the best player on the board, regardless of position, I think.
Easy. Yeah. He should be available right now.
I could see them liking Makai Wingo too, just because trades how like
I agree. I think that he's a 3 tech for them that they'd like. I think a guy like Tyler Davis could make some sense if they want to go more 1 tech there.
I think at this point though, like regardless of what we think of like Zach Pickens, like the player, if they draft a D tackle now, he's not going to be playing over Zach Pickens.
That's exactly what I think. Like I'm like,
D tackle seems odd here.
Well, to me, the idea with like a guy like Tyler Davis or maybe a Christian Boyd later is like you have your backup 1 tech now, and Zach Pickens is rotating at 3 tech with Javon.
I guess, yeah, that's true. I'm just
refreshing. I just don't think he's
I'm waiting for Steve's call, bro, because I'm not looking at my phone's charging right now, and I honestly like just watching it live. But
I like watching it live, but I just can't. I can't.
For the Bears, I hear you. I hear you.
You didn't know.
I'm gonna highlight Norzad just because I feel like I would not be upset if they went.
Javon Dexter tweeted out the eyes emoji right now.
What does that mean?
A D tackle, maybe? I don't know. Pick us in. They didn't trade.
Interesting. 'Cause I thought trading down was definitely something that they could have considered.
I feel like they might do that
Hopefully
tomorrow.
they saw Christian Haynes still on the board, and they're like, we wanted to
yeah.
trade down, but we're
Yeah.
not going
If
to
it's
now.
Christian Haynes, I fully understand not trading down.
Yeah.
They have Bayless Jones with his 4.3 speed just running in the picks, 'cause it's always good for
Got to
him.
use him for something.
Yeah.
He's not
Oh
he's not
no!
the payroll.
Oh no!
Who do they take?
It's Kieran Emma-Gadije from Yale, the offensive tackle.
Wait, you don't so I'm not familiar with his game, to be honest. I don't know.
He's very raw. He's very raw. So this is just a
Super
pure upside
traitsy.
play. Toolsy, long, athletic, but man, that's not a guy who's going to help you this year.
No, that's a Braxton Jones replacement.
I don't hate it
In
though.
2 years.
I don't hate it though. Like, all right, I need to watch him before I say that, but I don't hate the thought process. Like that was
Yeah.
always in the back of my mind because I mean, I think Steve is pretty familiar with what I think about Braxton Jones. Like, I don't think he's the left tackle of the future. Like, I still think you should be looking for that guy. And like, I'm not saying Kieran Amagaji is either,
I
but
don't know how to pronounce his name too.
yeah, for real. But I think the process is correct.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I would, I was more okay with him in the 130s, 120s. I mean, maybe
Okay.
he wouldn't get there with how traitsy he is, but it's just his tape is so raw.
Okay.
Like, I'm gonna swap this screen share real quick so I can share a different aspect of it. But it's also hard to tell because he played at Yale. You're not getting
Right.
good tape from Yale.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no stats
Was
on
he,
him.
was he a Senior Bowl guy?
No, I don't
Was he
think
at the
he was at
Senior
the
Bowl? I don't think so. I've got the
I don't think
rosters
so.
here.
He might have been invited and was injured, but he wasn't practicing. I know.
Damn.
Yeah, I
but
don't
yeah,
think
it's a high
was.
upside, but it's a lot like Braxton Jones.
Did you like him better than Braxton Jones as a prospect?
No, I liked Braxton Jones better.
What do you-
But I think
They're
it's
very
the
similar.
same.
Like, one thing I will say, 36-inch arms are
Yeah.
not something you find. And this draft had like 4 guys with them.
Mhm.
Like, that is a rare trait. And this draft had that. But man,
So
I'm a little disappointed.
Brugler had him at a 3rd round grade, number 87 overall. So it's maybe like a slight reach, but not crazy according to Dane Brugler. I think this is kind of the range where he should have gone. Like he was getting some even round 2 hype, I feel like. But
Yeah, Nate Tice really liked him. I think he had a round.
I have to watch more. I mean, I had 3 Yale games of all 22, and I watched them all, and it's just like it's hard to scout those guys because the guys like he's going up against 220-pound edge players.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
what am I learning from watching him win
sure.
those guys? There was just not a lot of like true pass sets on tape. There's a
That's
lot
the
of
hardest
action.
part.
Yeah. So it's like how do you scout this? So and he didn't test athletically. So he looks like a good athlete against these.
He was
guys
coming
who are
off
never
a
gonna be
torn
NFL
quad.
players, but I don't know.
He was coming off a torn quad. The first game I watched of him, I'm pretty sure he tore the quad in that game. And I messaged Steve right after watching. I was like, I hate this guy. This guy's tape offends me. And it was because he was playing on a torn quad and he couldn't be aggressive at all. The next 2 games I watched, he was really aggressive, really getting after people. But that first game really turned me off on him because I was like, this guy has the wrong mentality out here. But Illinois kid, grew up in Hinsdale. So keeps following that trend. I think he has a pretty strong ceiling. We have his ceiling here around like a key player plus start or something like that. His ceiling is probably towards a Pro Bowl player. It's just not, it's unlikely that he hits that because he's starting out so raw.
Mhm.
Like his physical profile, I think can be a Pro Bowler. I think he's got pretty loose hips. And that length plus loose hips, I think the sky can be the limit for someone like that. It's just a question of getting him from Ivy League level of competition to NFL. And they have 2 years to do it with Braxton Jones already here. So I kind of support that and like that idea. But I don't know. I was just hoping for someone who was a bit more of a day one contributor, I guess.
Exactly. Like I really wanted I would have been fine with a tackle because my thought process was like, I don't want to see Larry Borum ever again. So like if you draft a swing tackle at 75, like I think that has really good value because you're going to have injuries, but like I don't see this guy stepping in at all this year. Like I don't think he'd be like pretty much unplayable. I don't know if he's an upgrade over Larry Borum at this point. Like the hope is that he will be, but he just doesn't do anything to help you this year. And I feel like the Bears really needed someone to help him out this year, even if it was just like a role player. It didn't have to be a starter, but someone who can make an impact in some capacity. And that's not this guy. But it's a high upside swing, so I don't hate that. But
let me ask you guys this: do you think there's any guard versatility for him?
he played guard in 2021.
Did he?
And was honorable mention All Ivy League team. So he has played. I mean, it's tough with 36-inch arms, though. Like you don't see a lot of 36-inch arm
for sure.
The thing with guard is he has the frame to anchor, right? I think he has the lower body thickness. He's going to be able to anchor just fine with some core strength there too. But I don't have proof of his anchor,
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know who the strongest player he's been bull rushed by.
I'm watching the highlights right now on the TV, and these guys are like linebackers playing edge. Like you don't really know.
It's just tough. It's just tough. But I mean, I'm sure the Bears worked him out, and I think Poles has kind of earned the benefit of the doubt on this.
Yeah, with the offensive line, in Poles we trust, right?
Yeah, I know. We were just talking about how his third round hasn't been his sweet spot, it's very possible. Like this is a complete bust of a pick, but it's also possible you get a starting quality left tackle in a year or two at pick 75, which would be great value.
3 third-round picks now. He's attacked traits all 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
The first 2 times where they were half measures, where he's going after traits from big school guys who you might already know what they are, but they do have nice traits. This is a guy with really nice traits. You don't necessarily know who he is, and is more of a ball of clay. So I can't appreciate that. It's not like with Velus and Zach Pickens. It was kind of like we might already know that their traits are kind of at their ceiling.
How old is Kieran Amagaji?
He's 22.
So that's not terrible. The thing with drove me crazy. I mean, Velus Jones, we don't have to talk about, but with Zach Pickens, he played 4 years in South Carolina, and like just his production was like the same. Like he kind of broke out his last year, but like relative to his production, it was all kind of similar. So I was like, okay, like Gervin Dexter is like new to football and super traitsy. I understand you thinking like he just needs to play more to figure it out. I don't really know anything about Zach Pickens. Like he was a highly recruited guy. Like I think a 5-star recruit, and didn't do anything at South Carolina. Like that's what kind of drove me crazy. Like I just thought he was a developmental guy through and through.
Part of the thing with Pickens was he was asked to 2-gap on that D line as like a nose tackle.
Yeah,
and he's not that. Like that. Sure. So that was part of the projection there of like get him out of a 2-gap role, get him in a single gap 3-tech, and this guy might be able to flourish. That was my thought process at least, but. You're right. He didn't produce there. He barely got by as a 2-gapping nose tackle. So,
yeah. And so the thing with, I guess, what I think is different with Kieran Amagaji is he sounds like just like a kind of on the Gervin Dexter wavelength, right? Like just like a total ball of clay. You're just hoping you can teach how to play tackle, which I think there's way more case studies of that at offensive tackle than there are as a pass rusher. Like I feel like guys either really have it or they don't in most cases. I think you can point, and I'm not saying it's a great hit rate, but in terms of like a developmental guys, like you can take toolsy, like the Jordan Mailatas of the world. Like there are case
That's
studies.
exactly who I was just thinking.
Yeah, that they kind of work out. I think what's his name, Bernard Raymond too. When with the Colts, like he was a Pro Bowler last year. Like he was raw, new to the sport. There are case studies to kind of follow a blueprint too.
Now, Steve, do you remember? Is Kieran new to the sport at all, or was he just an Ivy League guy?
I was just I was just reading Brugler's report, and he like played in high school, like all 4 years in high school. He was just not very heavily recruited. He was like the 284th ranked offensive tackle in the 2020 recruiting class, so number 79.
Does that say where he went to high school?
What's that?
Does that say where he went to high school?
Central.
Oh wow,
Central?
It's my neighborhood high school. I mean, it's not my high school; it's the one across the way.
There you
go.
I went
to the south.
You should have been scouted him in high school. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, he's a little younger than me, but
I'm not
yeah,
sure I
no,
can
for
put
sure.
up with the Hinsdale Central Devil on the Bears. Coming from a Glenbard West alum, but
Oh, right, yeah, that's your guys' rival.
I'll live with it, I suppose.
I'm sure that honestly, though, I'm sure that factored into why they loved him so much. I mean, it is a thing for them. Like we know that's what they do. They draft hometown guys.
Yeah, no, they want that spirit, that fire from it of being like,
Mhm.
I grew up watching this team. I take a lot of pride in this jersey. Like that's a real thing in their scouting, I think.
He did get an invitation to the Senior Bowl, but couldn't participate because of the injury.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now,
I just wanted to ask your guys because I kind of just said like I'm not the I think Braxton Jones is fine. Again, I just like don't like I think there's a clear ceiling to his game. What are your guys' thoughts on Braxton Jones?
I think this pick kind of tells you the Bears' thoughts on Braxton Jones.
For
Is that
sure, for
they're
sure.
fine with him, but they're not going to pay him. And
Mhm.
they're hoping that in 2 years they just let him walk and Kieran kind of takes over that role. But I think that's how I think of him too. Like I think he's good and he's great when he's on this the fifth round rookie contract. But as soon as you have to pay him, like I don't really love him as much. But that being said, he also could take like a huge step forward this year, and that my opinion completely changes. Which I think is still possible. Like I think we kind of talk about Braxton Jones like he's a finished product, which I don't think is the case. Like I think he still has room to get better. So if he does kind of take that next step, then you do sign him to a contract, and then you have a really good swing tackle, or maybe you move him to Kieran to guard or whatever. But I think this kind of, like I said, kind of tells you what the Bears think of Braxton Jones, at least what their plan is for him.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I think sorry, Q, I know you're looking up.
oh, you're good.
With Braxton Jones, I think there is room for improvement. Like with his hands, like going back and watching him, like I thought he's just still kind of late with his hands all the time. Like he lets guys get into his chest too much, and like that's what drives me nuts about him is he has 35 and an 1/8 inch arms, and like he doesn't use them at all. Like he never makes first contact most of the times in pass protection. It drives me crazy. But what really worries me about Braxton, I guess, where like I have my doubts about him is like I just still think he doesn't have enough range of pass protection. Like guys just get on his hip too much, and I don't think that's ever going to really change. I think that's just always going to be a limitation of his game. But if he can get better with his hands and like make contact earlier, then that's
If
his
he
pathway
can,
to succeed. I just like haven't seen that in 2 years. Obviously, that's like a lot to ask from a guy
if
coming from Southern Utah, but I'm just saying like that's the path I think he needs to take in order to take that next step and earn a payday from the Bears.
if he can develop a good outside shoulder punch, he can deal with the guys getting his outside hip because he can
Mhm.
knock them off their track and knock them back towards the inside. Like if you want to be very frustrated, watch a game of Trent Williams, then watch a game of Braxton Jones because they are very similar frames, very similar like physically. Trent's probably a better athlete, I'm sure he
Mhm.
is, but the way that they need to win is very similar. Trent is amazing at it. Braxton isn't near it yet. Where that exactly what you're saying, the hand fighting, the technique of hitting that outside shoulder when a guy is going outside to knock him back inside his own lane where he can take control with his long arms. That's what he needs to be able to do. He has the physical tools to do that, but it's not as simple as just I'm going to punch that guy's shoulder, right? It
Mhm.
takes years of practice, years of timing, years of knowing what they're going to counter you with to be able to react to it too. And it's like I think Braxton can be a good tackle in this league. I also think the neck injury last year, he was not the same after he came back from it, which makes me this pick makes me wonder a little bit if they're at all worried about that because he came back and he was serviceable, but he did not have the same mobility that he did before. Um, so ultimately, I get it. I don't know that I'm sitting here thinking I want to pay Braxton Jones. So I'm all for getting a developmental guy. I just think 75 felt a little rich to it, but in reality, this guy probably isn't there at 122 because as I'm looking at this board, I'm not sure there's many guys here I would bet on to stay at tackle
I
over.
mean, And he was right. I don't know if I said this yet on the mock draft database consensus board. He was 82nd. So I mean, like that was like right where he was intended to go. So I agree. I don't know if like we know the NFL, like they don't wait around for these guys. Like you could be as raw as ever, and if you're tradesy, they're gonna take you high.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally, I'm fine with it. I mean, I probably would have preferred a Christian Haynes or an Austin Booker, but I get this pick. I understand why they did it, and I do think there's some serious upside in this kid. Our board says 133. I don't know how to grade Yale tape.
That's what it is. Like that, you just can't. Like it's so hard, but I'm sure the Bears. I mean, obviously the Bears have access to more tape, and they can interview him and talk to his coaches and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
if they think he can be a future NFL starter, then you have a home run at pick 75, which you don't. And I think I do this too. Like we kind of overrate these like third and fourth round picks. Like odds are at most pick 75 players are gonna suck. Like so, like if you get a guy who has a potential to be like a home run starter, like I think it's hard to be mad about that.
And just to go through this, I mean, I look at and Steve, feel free, or Tom, both of you, feel free to chime in. But I look at Dominic Puny. I see a guy who might have to be a guard, but has a tackle mentality to me, where he's not going to win like an offensive guard typically would. I know I've seen a lot of people say that they think he's really nasty. I didn't see that on tape as much. I saw a guy who wins in space with timing and finesse more than anything. Christian Jones might be right side only. I like him. I think there's a clear ceiling on his game, though, because of hip tightness and because of guys getting on his outside hip and him just being a little slow. Delmar Glaze, Steve, I didn't actually get to watch any of them. What did you think of Delmar Glaze? And
He
where
just
would you
went,
rank
didn't
him?
he?
He went like right after the Bears picked. I liked Delmar Glaze though, but I liked him as a guard, not so much as a tackle. But I liked him a lot as a guard. I would have been fine with his pick as well. But like I tend to gravitate more towards guys who are like good in college and there's not as much projection. That's like I think Delmar Glaze can step in and be like a pretty good guard for you immediately, but he doesn't have the ceiling that the Kieran does. Or I gotta look to pronounce his name, but he doesn't have the ceiling that this guy does. So like I get why the Bears wouldn't favor that guy, but I always favor. My mentality is if you're a good college player, you'll most likely be a good NFL player, and I don't like to have that much projection. Kieran's all projection.
Karan,
that's gonna Karan.
Mega G.
A Mega G. Okay, I'll get there eventually.
Karan, a Mega G.
Karan, a Mega G.
I mean, it's all projection. It's not like nothing he did in college is going to be directly translatable to the NFL because of the competition he played against. So it's just a big risk, high risk, high reward pick. But again, you only have 4 picks and you're picking at 75. Like that's perfectly fine to take that route.
And then Matt Gonzalez, I watched a few games of him. I thought he was pretty clean in pass pro, pretty impressive, but he's had some knee injuries. So you get that injury risk there coming with him. And I wasn't very impressed by his run blocking. I think the upside of a Mega G gives you a bit more projection there to be able to say this guy might be really good. KT Levison, Steve, this was one of your guys. Again, what did you think about him?
More similar to Glaze, where he played offensive tackle in college, but he's going to be a guard in the pros. He, as a guy I liked, like this would have been a reach on him for sure, but I liked him because he just plays with a lot of power and good anchor. Like he's a bit of like a plotter. Like he doesn't have great foot speed, which is one of the reasons you got to play him a guard. So I didn't really love him for the Bears that much because that's how I was thinking, they love athleticism, but I did like him a good amount.
And more than anything, I'm generally trying to show like what were their other options to try to get a developmental tackle, right? Like even later in the draft. And I'm looking at this, I'm really starting to feel a lot better about the Omega G pick too, because it's like the next developmental guys you're talking about were Frank Crum and Garrett Greenfield, and I would bet on Omega G over either of those two every time.
Yeah, and I'll also, Steve, I am the first one to say that like you need to show that you were somewhat level good in college for me to like feel comfortable projecting you to be an effective player in the NFL. I do think offensive line is like the one position where it's so there's a lot of things different from college to the NFL, but offensive line specifically, in terms of pass protection, there's so many differences, I think, just across college football to where you get to the NFL, where like most offensive linemen go through some type of learning curve. Obviously, more so than others. There's some that go through more of learning curve than others, like Kieran will go through. But I think that is like the one position I don't like. Not that I don't care, but I feel better about taking like the toolsy upside to develop versus like an edge rusher, which we just kind of know if like you weren't productive in college, like you're not going to be productive in the NFL. But offensive line, I think there are some examples where they're developed if you have the right coaching and stuff like that. We don't really know that about the Bears yet, right? About their offensive line coach. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I think that it's a position where you do have some more of the development ability because most of these kids coming from college, they are coming in pretty raw. Like
Right.
they're not being developed all that well at the college level. So we saw Jonah Ellis go off the board after Omega G, and then we saw Delmar Glaze go to the Raiders. Let's see. I'm gonna try to get this squared away a little bit so we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at for tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, I think I already got Glaze. So Kalen Bullock went off the board to the Texans. I like that pick for them a lot, actually. I think that's a strong pick for them. That D'Amico Ryan's defense might be eaten. And then Gonzalez went right after, so the Bears seem to have a pretty good idea of the board because they got their tackle before another one went off.
Yeah, there you go. He's who I'm going to be grinding tonight. Our boy, the Hinsdale Central guy, Karan.
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching him tonight.
It's the only tape I could find from him was the guy on YouTube, do a barrel roll.
Okay.
Jake Barrow. That was the only tape I could find for Karan. It's all broadcast view.
I got some all 22 if you guys want it.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be hitting you up for some of that.
Right.
Jermaine Burton is a Cincinnati Bengal.
Dude, what?
Oh, that's
wow.
That's nice. Cincinnati's having a day.
So I have a dynasty draft going on right now, and like I wonder where he's going to go because the landing spots for these receivers has been brutal. Like it has not been. Sorry, I don't mean to go off topic here.
Oh, you're good.
But the receiver landing spots like Pearsall to the 49ers, like Keon Coleman to the Bills, like it just like has not been great from a fantasy perspective. That's a pretty good one if you think Jermaine Burton can be as good as I do. But yeah, interesting.
And we've seen the Bengals take some high risk guys with like a Joe drawing a blank Joe Mixon, and find some success with them. So it'll be interesting to see how that lands up. And we still got Christian Haynes. There had to be an injury or something.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how he's still on the board.
I know he is older, isn't he? He's like 24 years old, isn't he?
He is 24, but I mean, I don't know. I always feel like
it's a little overrated.
I don't worry that much about it for interior D line, especially interior O line outside of round one. Like if I'm taking a guard round one, he needs to be the right age. But once you're talking the third round, I don't really care if he's 21 or 24. If the guy is good, he's good. Is kind of the way I see it.
For sure. No, I totally agree.
And then Brandon Dorlus just keeps falling too. That's interesting. So we still got quite a few picks. So we don't have to stay on for all the rest of it. We'll let Steve get back in here and then maybe wrap it up unless you guys want to keep riding with it, then we can.
Yeah, no, I think we covered it pretty well. I wish I was more informed. I'm sorry I wasn't able to
you're good,
man. My eyes on the Yale tape before we got on here. But yeah.
Dude, he was one of the last guys I watched because it was like I need to watch something. I'm just gonna do the broadcast for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely a hard find to get eyes on him. But I know a lot of people like him. Like I listened to the Athletics Draft podcast, and I know I know Nate Tice was a big fan. I think he had him in his top 50, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Nate was big on the projection guys because I think I had. Let me see. I think I had Karan over Sue.
Oh, Christian Haynes just went.
Did he?
To Seattle, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're good.
I knew we were waiting for it. So
Yeah, Nate Tice was big on the projection guys because he was really big on Sue Mattia too. And Sue Mattia was in the similar boat for me as a Mega G. But when I'm looking at those massive projections, like I had both Frank Crum and a Mega G over Sue Mattia because I'm sitting here saying, okay, these guys have a reason to be this raw. I'm not sure Sue Mattia does. Like,
I did not like Sumatai, honestly. I was not a fan. I mean, I think he ended up in a good spot with the Chiefs. They got a good offensive line coach. They've shown that they can develop guys, but like, yeah, people were talking him like top 40. Didn't see it.
yeah, I had some real concerns about whether the Bears might take a Sue Mattia if they made a trade down from 9 or something. I was like,
Oh
please no,
no.
I don't know if I can put up with that or deal with that. But oh, let Steve back in.
Sorry, my computer is on its last legs. I'm going to give this one more chance.
Oh, you're good. I think we're wrapping up anyways. So
I think you lost him again.
Okay. So we'll just go with you on this, Tom. Who are you thinking they should be targeting with the next pick, 122? Do you think it should be a trade down? And if so, how far do you think they could be willing to go?
I think Hunter Norzad is really interesting. I might give him a watch because I wish I would have got some more of these interior offensive line guys. But from the way you guys make him out, he sounds very fascinating, and I think they are still looking for their center of the future. So he's really intriguing to me. And then Brandon Dorless, I know, is a tweener type. I don't love those tweener types, but I think, and I'm curious to get your take. A lot of people like him as an interior defensive line, and I'd rather go for, even though they like interior defensive line's not a screaming need for them, I'd rather go for a guy with more of a path in that regard than to like reach on some edge that like is probably not gonna,
Yeah.
you know.
So I will say, if you go watch Norzad tonight, there's one thing you need to be aware of before you watch him. He was a tackle at Cornell, then played, I believe it was left guard his first year at Penn State, and then Penn State center went down before last year, and he started playing center because of that. Never played center before. His tape from the beginning of the year, he looks like he cannot ID a stunt for his life.
Okay.
He is just, it looks like a fatal flaw of just like, why is this guy not being talked about? Oh, I see now. And it's just like, but every game as the year went on, he got better and better at picking them up, which is part of the reason why I like him. Because it was like he showed that growth within a single season.
I mean, that's just like a cool ass nugget, like that he was able to figure out center of all positions. Like centers have to be, I feel like, the most mentally aware of all of the offensive linemen.
Right.
They make a lot of the protection calls. They're IDing a lot of stuff. And the fact that he was able to make that transition on the fly is very, very impressive. I mean, he was an Ivy Leaguer for a reason, right?
He was a runner-up for the academic Heisman, actually.
Okay, there you go.
So very smart dude. But the first few games of the season, it looked like he couldn't ID a stunt for his life, and it was ugly when they threw him at him. But like I said, he was picking him up later in the year, and it wasn't like teams were hammering him with them all year. If he couldn't pick them up, you'd think they'd just be, they always have that pocket in their card or in their pocket, that card in their pocket, right? So I'm looking at this saying like Norzad is definitely a target for me at 122 if he's there. If he's not there, I'm probably looking to maybe trade down a bit if I think Limmer's going to keep falling there. But I do want to come out of this with a guy who can play center, and preferably a center who might be able to play guard, not a guard who might be able to play center. So to me, I'm looking at Bo Limmer. I'm looking at Jacob Monk, who's a guy who I caught on late, and I really liked his upside.
Yeah, I've heard nothing about him.
Yeah, neither had I. He was higher up on the ESPN big board, I noticed, once the draft started than anywhere else I've seen. So it made me feel less crazy because I wasn't the only one. But him and Matt Lee out of Miami are guys who I'm interested in. I think they have more upside than what's been let on so far. And Tanner Bortolini is always an option too. I think he has some stuff to really like and some elite athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
There was one or two things that were kind of flags to me with him. One, he had some snapping issues. He was a guard who converted to center with snapping issues. It makes me question whether he can stay at center.
Mm-hmm.
And two, he needs to learn to keep his feet in front of the block more. He tends to leave them behind, and I think that's something that can really get highlighted in the NFL in a pretty ugly fashion. I don't think it's a definite that it will, and something that guy can fix, but it's something that does worry me a little bit with him and why I'm a little higher on a Bo Limmer and a Hunter Norzad than others. Now, at other positions, I mean, I'd love to get Dwayne Carter. I'm a big fan of his. I think Leonard Taylor III could be a nice pickup in like the fifth if you get picks in the fifth or sixth because he's just a high upside guy. And obviously a lot of that will come down to the interviews. He was a bit of a question mark as far as his effort sometimes.
He was supposed to be like, wasn't he supposed to be like a top 20 pick this year, like heading into the year, and then it just totally went downhill?
He was like a top 10 recruit in the country out of high school.
Oh my goodness.
But one thing that did happen though, their nose tackle went down. He had to play nose tackle all year.
Okay.
And the flashes are there. It's not as much as Zach Pickens, where it was the guy was just getting beat up at nose tackle. He was still flashing. It was just super inconsistent.
Right.
So which makes me think if you put him in a 3-tech, maybe he can do it. Mekhi Wingo's a guy I liked. And then there's a lot. I'd really like to see him trade down from 122 as long as they feel comfortable about still getting one of these centers, because there are a lot of names on this board that I am still really impressed with.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I liked all the names and the people I didn't even know much about. I think you made a pretty good case for. So, I mean, I'd be all about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that will do it for our show. Thank you so much for jumping on, Tom. And we thank Steve as well, even though his computer just kind of died at the end there. Make sure to go follow these guys at TommyK_NFL Draft, right? On Twitter.
That is me.
And then the Bears Blog Boy podcast. They do a great job over there. And for Steve at CFC Bears, they do the Chicago Football Connection podcast. And make sure to go check that out on YouTube as well. And thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for listening to the draft with us. Have a good night and bear down.
Bear down, y'all.